Curious George, Rain or Shine? Read by Mr. C, the teacher. Curious George was a playful little monkey. Like most playful little monkeys, he loved having fun outside. But sometimes the weather would not cooperate with George. It would be too windy for playing ball or too wet for flying a kite. George was tired of the weather ruining his fun. He decided that he would just have to be prepared for anything. Then the doorman told him that some animals have a special way to tell the weather. George was curious. He didn't think that he was one of those animals, but maybe he could become one. George decided to ask his friend, the man with the yellow hat. The man told George about a saying that sailors use to help them predict the weather. Red sky at night, sailors delight. This meant that if a sailor saw a bright red sunset, the next day should be sunny. That gave George an idea. He would draw pictures of the sky and then watch what happened to the weather. He started with the red sunset that evening. The next day was warm and sunny. He drew a picture of that below the sunset from the day before. He even drew the cricket he met while he was drawing. The next morning, there were dark clouds to draw. His cricket friend was back, but he was much quieter on that chilly day. By that afternoon, it was raining. Did clouds mean that it would rain? George thought so. These drawings were becoming very useful. The next day, George used his drawings to help make a decision. When the man asked if George wanted to go on a picnic, George predicted that the clouds he saw that morning would mean rain later on. He decided to stay at home. But it never rained. In fact, it was a beautiful day. The blue sky was full of fluffy white clouds. Aha! So maybe dark clouds meant that it would rain. White clouds meant the weather would be good. George was so happy when he saw a sky full of white clouds the next morning. Now he could go on that picnic. But George's happiness did not last long. Wind blew a storm in that soaked his sandwich. The wind had ruined his picnic and his prediction. This weather business was not easy. How was George supposed to predict wind, too? The next day, George noticed a flag flapping in the wind. He didn't have a flag, so he used the man's sock as one. George watched as the sock flapped in the direction that the wind blew. George also had a pinwheel. When the wind blew fast, his bee pinwheel spun quickly. And when the wind blew slowly or not at all, the pinwheel spun slowly too. Now he could tell how fast the wind was blowing. As a special treat, George's friend took him to the weather station for a visit. There were no socks, pinwheels, crayons, or crickets. How did they predict the weather? The weather scientist told George that they used radar and satellites in space to find weather patterns. Unfortunately, they were missing one of their satellites. They wouldn't be able to predict the day's weather for the mayor's big golf game. George had an idea. George raced home. The sock and the pinwheel showed the morning storm clouds were being blown away. His drawing showed the sky was red the night before, and the cricket was chirping quickly. George predicted it would be a good day for golfing. He could predict the weather after all. Back at the weather station, the mayor was happy to hear the news. He invited everyone to come to the golf course. George had one more prediction to make that day. Tomorrow would be a great day for a picnic. George learns a lot about the weather by watching clouds. Did you know that there are many different kinds of clouds? Here are the 4 most common kinds. Stratus clouds that look like big blankets of white in the sky form a word that means layers. They might bring rain. Cumulus, the big puffy clouds that look like piles of cotton balls, form a word that means heap. Usually cumulus clouds mean good weather, picnic weather. Cirrus clouds that are high and wispy form a word that means hair. They are made of ice crystals and can mean bad weather. Nimbus clouds that produce rain from a word that means rain, well, these are usually big and might be gray.